Welcome back to the Arbitrary YouTube channel. In today's class, we'll be learning how to make a 6 pieces blouse, just like what we are seeing here. So it's a very simple method, and we're going to be cutting this directly on our fabric. So if this is what you like to learn, kindly stay tuned. So to make this blouse, I'll be working with this measurement: a shoulder of 16 inches, bust point of 10 inches, bust of 44 inches, under bust 14, half length is 16 inches, the waist circumference is 36, the hip line, which doubles as my blouse length, is 26, and the hip is 46 inches. So this is quite for a big size, so to say. And I'll be working with this fabric, so I'm just managing this fabric because I don't have much fabric. So this is supposed to be a 3/8 fabric, but I've used out of it. As you can see, I've cut some, so I'll be managing this, and I'll be cutting a 6 pieces blouse, but I'm also going to use it to explain an 8 pieces for us. We don't have enough fabric. I would have cut an 8 pieces blouse, so I'll be cutting the 6 pieces. Then the difference between the 6 pieces actually, and the difference between 6 pieces and 8 pieces is that in the case of 6 pieces, so the 6 pieces is like this. It doesn't have any seam line at the center front, so which means you're going to be having 3 panels, which is one is going to be a princess dart bustier seam line. So that's the dart that goes through the armhole. So you're going to be having 1, 2, and 3 for the front, and 1, 2, and 3 for the back, which is going to make it a 6 pieces blouse. But in the case of 8 pieces, we're going to be cutting it at the center front, yes, which means there's going to be another seam line going through the center front, which now makes it 1, 2, 3, and 4 for front, and 1, 2, 3, and 4 for back, which will make it 8 pieces blouse. Okay, so that is just the difference that we have, and I'm going to be explaining it to us using this fabric. So now we already know the measurements we are working with, and like I said, it's going to be a big size. So the first thing I will do is to fold my fabric, because this fabric is actually small, so I need to know how to manage it. To know how to fold my fabric, I'm going to check the circumference measurements that I have, and the one that is bigger is the hip, which is the 46 inches. So that is what I'm going to be using to fold my fabric. The fabric is already folded into 2, as we can see. So this one is going to be for the front, while this one is for the back. So now to know how to fold, because this fabric is folded into 2, I'll be dividing remember, this 46 is for the whole hip, so I'll be dividing it by 2, and it's going to give me 23 inches. So this is a 6 pieces skirt, and as you are seeing in the thumbnail, it has like a flare. So depending on how big you want your flare to be, you can add maybe 10 inches to this 23, you can add 12 inches to it. So if you add 10 inches, it means you're adding 5 for one side. Remember, the front is like this, one side, this is the center front, the right side and the left side. So if you're adding 10 inches extra, it means you're adding 5 to this side, 5 to this side. If you're adding 12 inches extra, it means you're adding 6 to this side, 6 to this side. So for me, I don't have too much fabric, so I'm just going to be adding 10 inches to this 23 inches to know how much fabric that I'm going to be folding. So 10 plus 23 is going to give me 33 inches. So by the yard, like this, you can see the selvage here, I'm going to be measuring out 33 inches, and it's on fold, so I'm cutting front and back. So this is not even up to 33, this is around 31 or 31 and a half, but I'm going to be managing it like that. So for the length, the blouse length that I'm working with, including seam allowance, is 26 inches. So now I'm going to be measuring my 26 inches from here. So I'll be measuring 26 inches, and then I'm going to cut that out. So I've cut this out now, and this is 26 inches in length by 30 something, 31 and a half or thereabouts on the vertical area. So now I have two together, front and back. I'm just going to slash in it so that I can work on the front, then I'll work on the back later. So I'll just keep this back aside. So now for the front, I'm going to be putting this on fold. Okay, I'm going to put it on fold by the 33 inches. That's by the circumference measurements, which is the width. So this is 26 inches. Okay, so this is 26 inches, as you can see, and then this is the circumference measurement. So the next thing now is to start inputting my lines, my shoulder line, my bust point line, and everything. Okay, so I've made my markings. I'm not sure if these chalks are visible. I've tried different colors of chalk, but it's like this blue is still the brightest, so I'm going to stick with the blue. Just follow what I'm doing. So I have my first line here, which is my armhole line. I have my bust point line here, and I have my waistline here, and this here is my hemline. So I went ahead to measure my shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches, and then I dropped it by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. I measured 3 inches here for my neckline, and I'm going to be using 3 inches by 3 inches, which is the natural neckline for the front first. Then I can change it to whatever neckline that I wish to use later. Okay, so this is my neckline curve and this is my shoulder slope. I hope you can see it. Then I went ahead to draw my armhole curve. Okay, so my bust measurement is 44 inches divided by 4 gave me 11 inches, which is what I used here. So the next thing now is to take my princess dart bustier line. And to do this now, I'm going to be taking the measurements using my bust point, which is also known as bust span, which is also known as the nipple to nipple. For this person is 9 inches from one nipple to the other. Divided by 2 is going to give me 4.5 inches. So I'm going to be measuring the 4.5 inches on my nipple point here. I'll measure 4.5 inches, and then on my waistline here, on my under bust line here, I'll measure 4 inches. That is, whatever you have as your nipple to nipple, you measure it on your bust line. Then when you get your under bust, you deduct 1/2 inch from it, and that's giving me 4 inches. Then I'll move to my waistline, which is this. I'll also measure the 4 inches there, and then I'll go to my M line and also measure the 4 inches. Then I'm going to be connecting all the lines together using my ruler. So I'm going to connect the 4 inches lines first, and then I'm going to connect this to the 4.5 inches that I have on my waistline, on my bust point, sorry. Then the next thing now is to link it to my armhole. Remember I said this is an armhole princess dart, so it may be quite different from the one that we draft on paper, because we are drafting this on fabric. So we'll not be using the method of closing the bust dart. I'm not going to be using the bust dart for this, because I'm not going to be slashing our ankara and closing it back. So this is another opportunity for us to learn another method of creating a princess bust dart line. Okay, so now I have around 10.5 inches here. I'm going to divide that by 2. I'm measuring around my armhole, and whatever it is that I have, I'm going to measure it. So the half of this armhole is here. So using my curve, I'm going to be connecting it from my bust point up to this line with a smooth curve. You don't want this to be too sharp or anything. Okay, so to have a smooth curve now, on my bust point, I'm not going to be connecting directly on my bust point. So on my bust point line, I'm just going to be going down by like 1 inch, and then I'm going to take my curve. I just hope we are seeing this chalk very well, but just follow what I'm doing. So now I have my armhole line curve like this, and if you can see this, you will see that it is very smooth, it's not sharp. So this is the armhole curve line that I have there. So in case you are not seeing the ankara fabric well, I've changed it to this plain black fabric, so I'll be using this as my lining. Okay, so I have my points here. This is my armhole line, this is my bust point, this is my under bust, this is my waistline, and this is my full length. And here I've measured my shoulder measurements. This is my neckline 3 by 3, which I'm still going to change with to whatever neckline I want is a later on. And then for my bustier dart line, I measured 4.5 inches here, just like I've explained. Then here I reduced this by 1/2 inch on my under bust, on my waistline, and on my hemline. Then here I went down by 1 inch, and then I connected it to my armhole. So the next thing now is to take my dart. So you can take a dart of 2 inches, 2.5 inches, depending on how busty the person is, or even 3 inches if the person is really busty. But 2.5 inches is fine for me. So on my under bust line, I'll be marking 2.5 inches. On my waistline, I'll be marking 2.5 inches, and also on my hemline, I'll be marking 2.5 inches. And using my ruler, I'm going to be connecting these lines together. Okay, so this means that I'm taking a bust dart of 2.5 inches for this particular outfit. So the next thing now is to connect this to my bust point using a curve. So like I said, also because I don't want it too sharp, I'm going down by 1 inch here, just like I did earlier. and then on that 1 inch is what I'm going to be connecting these two. So using my curved ruler now. Okay, so I prefer to use this yellow curve to create my bust curve line. So now I'm going to be connecting it from there to that 1 inch mark like this. And once I remove this, you can see that it's just smoothly connect like that. You will not have any sharp edges there. So now here I'm going to be creating my armhole dart, and to do that I'll be creating a 2 inches dart for that, and I'll be sharing it 1 inch on both sides. So here I'll mark 1 inch, and also here I'll mark 1 inch, and then here on my bust point also I'll go up by 1 inch just like I did for this, and then I'm going to connect it to my 1 inch mark that I have here. Okay, so I've connected it here, and also here I'm going to be connecting it. Okay, so I've connected it here also. Okay, I think this chalk is bolder now, we can see it better, but I still don't want anything sharp, so I'm just trying to make sure that whatever sharp edge that I may have, I'm trying to throw everything so that my bust will not be looking funny. Okay, so I'm fine with what I have here. So the next thing now is to hide the shortage that I have here on my bust dart, because I'm going to be cutting this off. I have 2 inches dart, so this, the last dart leg here, I'll be extending it like this, and then the 2 inches shortage that I have there, I'm going to be adding it back here 2 inches, and then my under my bust point line I will be adding a 2 inches allowance also, and then I'm going to be redrawing my armhole curve like that. Okay, so we are fine with her that. Now the next thing is to start taking my circumference measurements. The first measurement, I've taken my bust measurement here, so the next measurement I'll be taking is my waist measurement, which is 36 inches. So 36 inches divided by 4 is 18 inches. So to take 18 inches now, I'll be measuring what I have here, which is 4 inches, and then the 4 inches I'm just going to take it, okay, and then I'll continue. So for those that ask if I don't add back my dart shortage, you can see that I'm not including it in my measurement. So what I have here is, remember we are still going to be cutting this off, so what I have here is 14 inches. I just took my tape rule now, I moved over the dart lines, and then I placed it here to continue my measurements from the 4 inches that I have here. So that is giving me 9 inches, which is this, and then I'm going to be connecting them together. Okay, so I hope that is quite explanatory. Then I'll add my seam allowance. Sorry, I'm just going to be adding like 1.5 inches seam allowance, or 1 inch if that is what you sew with. Remember, we are doing this directly on our fabric, so you need to add your seam allowances. I'm going to connect it like that, and then the next thing is for me to connect it to my dart leg. So my flare may be small because, like I said, I don't have enough fabric for this, so I'll just be working with what I have. But if you want your flare to be really big, instead of 10 inches that I added, you can add 12 inches or 14 inches to your measurement. So I'm just going to be connecting this now to the hemline like this. Okay, remember it's a 6 pieces, so it has like a flare here and here. And the next thing now, for this flare, I'm just going to be from my dart line here, from this last dart line, I'm going to be measuring 5 inches. That's 10 inches that I added. I'm going to be measuring 5 inches like this, and then from my waistline also I'm going to be connecting it like this. Okay, I'm going to be connecting this also to my waistline. I hope you understand it. It's very simple. So by the time I cut it out now, so the lines that I will be cutting, let me use this chalk to retrace it. I'm going to be cutting from here, okay, all the way to this place, and then my bust curve, and then I'm going to be cutting this also. So I'll keep this center front aside to cut out my center front later. So now, using my scissors, I'm just going to be cutting this. So you just cut carefully along your lines like this, and then when you're cutting your bust curve, you just take it slow and cut it carefully and neatly. Remember, we are trying to avoid any sharp edges. Okay, so that is cut now. The next thing is for me to cut out my sides. Okay, so I have my two side fronts here, and you can see what we have here. I'm just going to cut out this also, and then keep it to cut my center front later. So I want to cut out the darts here also completely. And then I'm going to keep it for later. So now we're going to be cutting the back. Okay, so for the back is similar to the front. As you can see, I took my measurement. This is my armhole, my bust line, my under bust, my waistline, and my hemline. Okay, so remember the back usually have a zipper at the front, although I think I'm going to be putting my front zipper, but because the generally the back usually have a back zipper, so I'm putting my zipper allowance for the back. So we have this 1.5 inches zipper allowance, or whatever, or what 1 inch, or whatever it is that you want to use as your zipper allowance. But you should note that we are going to be extending this by 5 inches. So whatever you have, you should make sure that you have enough for you to slant this back to your waistline. So that's why I'm using 1.5 inches here for my zipper allowance. So the next thing to do now is to measure exactly the way we did. For my bust pan, on my bust point, I measured 4.5 inches here. I reduced it by 1/2 inch and measured 4 inches on my under bust, on my waistline, and on the hemline. Then I connected everything. Then here I went down by 1.5 by 1 inch, and then I connected it to my armhole. So on my armhole line, I just went down by 4 inches from the upper part here, as against the bust, because I like the dash line of the armhole to just be upper at the back part compared to the front. So I just went down from here by 4 inches, but if you want, you can still measure your armhole and divide it by 2, just like we did for the front. So I hope we are clear with that. So the next thing we need to do now is to extend this by 1 inch, so that we not have any shortage by the time we are sewing it. So I'm going to be extending this by 1 inch, and then I'm going to check. So my 1 inch is here, and then I'm going to be extending this also by 1 inch, and then I will connect this. Okay, so here again I'm going to add another 1 inch here for my, okay, I used 1.5 inches, so I'm just going to be using another 1 inch. Okay, 1 inch is fine, so I'm going to be using 1 inch for my allowance. So the next thing now is to take my circumference measurement. So I've taken my bust measurement here, 11 inches, and I added 2 inches allowance. On my waistline, the waistline is 38, divided by 4 is going to give, is 36, sorry, divided by 4 is going to give me 9 inches. So I'm taking 9 inches here, and then I'm having 1.5 inches allowance. So I'm having 1.5 inches allowance because I'm not going to be sewing it, just going to be sewing it tiny. I don't really sew with too much allowance like that. But if you are going to be sewing with maybe thick allowance like 1/2 inch, remember we are going to be slashing this open and you are going to be sewing it back. So you may want to add like maybe 2 inches or 3 inches allowance, just to be on the safe side, so that by the time you finish sewing it, you are not going to be having any shortage. But because I'm just going to be holding it a bit, that is why I'm just adding this 1.5 inches allowance. So you should take note of that. So after connecting this like this, I'm going to be connecting it from here all the way to my hemline. You can see that the back part is quite easy. And then here on my dart line here, I'm going to be measuring 5 inches. From that place, I will measure 5 inches here like this. And then from my waistline also, I'm going to be connecting it back to this place like this. And then the back part is done. So the next thing for me now is to cut out this shape that I have. Okay, so I've cut this out now. As we can see, I'm just going to set this aside also to cut my center back. So I have my center front, I have my side back here, and also I have my side front here. So the next thing is to cut my center front and my center back using the patterns for the center front that I already have here and the pattern for the center back that I already have. Okay, so to cut out the center front, remember we have our pattern like this for our center front. So I'm just going to be placing it on it, but before I place it, for my 6 pieces, like I said, remember that for my 6 pieces there will be no joining in the front, just like I explained with the paper. Okay, there is no seam line in front, so you're just going to be placing it like this. Okay, you're going to be placing it on it like this for your 6 pieces, but for your 8 pieces you're going to be measuring 5 inches like this. You measure 5 inches. I'm just going to do a rough sketch. Remember I said I'm cutting 6 pieces, so let's say this is my 5 inches. So it is on that 5 inches that you're going to be placing your pattern like this. So you have 5 inches allowance here, so which means that on your waistline, just as we have done for the rest, on your waistline here you extend your waistline measurements like this, and then from the M line, okay, so this is my M line here, so from the M line I'm going to be connecting it like this to my waist with these 5 inches. Also on this side here I'm going to be extending my hem line like this also. Remember that we have cut part of it for our flare for the back, so you are going to be completing it. You are going to be completing your 4 inches that you have. That's the 4 inches that we measured on the M line, but we have this shortage because we have slanted our waist, cutting part of the center front. So my 4 inches is complete now. Now you are going to be measuring 5 inches like this also, and then you are going to be connecting it also to your waist like this. Okay, so when you're cutting it, you cut from here like this. You can add ½ inch allowance. Remember you are still going to sew it back. Then you cut from here and then you slant your hand. So here also you cut like this and you slant your hand and you cut it out, so which means that this part here is not going to be together, it's going to be separate, which means you are going to be having a seam line here at the center front. Okay, so that is how you cut for your 8 pieces. And when you're cutting for 8 pieces with for the back part, also when you're cutting the center back, just like we did for the front, you're going to be placing your back also like this, including your zipper allowance. Then you measure 5 inches before you place it, you connect it here also, you measure 5 inches outwards and then you connect it. So that's how you do it for your 8 pieces, but we are doing 6 pieces here. So now I'm going to be refolding my fabric. So I don't want to use the parts that I've already marked on. So now I'm going to be folding my fabric like this, and then I'm going to be placing my pattern on it. Okay, but remember that I said that I want my zipper to be in front. So before I place it now, I'm going to be measuring my zipper allowance for the front. So the zipper allowance that I want to use is just 1 inch. So I'll be measuring, but before I measure it, I want to make sure that I will have enough for my flare, which is 5 inches. So if I complete this now, if I complete my 4 inches and I place my tape rule, so it is not enough, so I'm just going to be folding it again. I hope you understand what I'm trying to do. Okay, so I folded it again, then I'll measure my 1 inch for my zipper allowance. Then I'll make it into a straight line. So I measured the 1 inch now and I'm placing my pattern on it. So after placing my pattern on it, I'll draw out my M line like that. Then after drawing out my hem line, I'm going to complete what I have here, which is my 4 inches, or you can just measure 4 inches from here and complete it like that. Then from that mark, I'm going to go outwards by 5 inches, which is here. So after marking that 5 inches, I'm going to connect that 5 inches to my waistline, which is this. So now to cut it out, the next thing is just for me to trace out the pattern that I already have. That's why I said it is easier to cut the center front since you already have the patterns already. So I'm just going to be tracing it out. So the fun fact there is that the center front and center back is actually cut the same way. Okay, you can use this to cut out your center back also. The only difference is just that you need to choose whichever one you are going to be putting your zipper allowance. For me now, for example, I want the zipper for this to be in the front. That is why I'm putting my zipper allowance in the front. But if I'm not putting my zipper allowance in the front and I cut this out, I can still use this to cut out my center back. And I'll try to prove this to us. Okay, so I've cut this out now, and I have this as my center front. So I'm just going to be slashing this open so that my zipper can go through it. Okay, so this pattern that I have here now, I don't need it again. So it depends on the type of sleeve that you want to use. If you are using like a calf sleeve or a small sleeve, you can use this one to cut out your sleeve. So this is my pattern now, and this is my side front. Okay, so my front pattern now is complete. So because this is a blouse and I don't want it too flat, on the side part of the blouse here, just like we do for our regular blouse, I'll be going up here by 2 inches, and then using my curve, I'm going to be connecting it in a curved way to my center front. Okay, so that I will just have it a bit curvy there. I don't want it too flat, excuse me. So that is all I need to do, and then I have my pattern like this. So now I'll be cutting my center back also. So for the center back, remember I said when I was drafting it, I added zipper allowance because we normally put zipper allowance at our back, but I'm not putting any zipper allowance here, so I'm just going to be folding in my zipper allowance. I've already done that for the front, and then I'll place it like this. So just like I cut out the front, after placing it, I'm going to complete my 4 inches, that leg that I took here, and then on that hem line there, I'm going to be marking 5 inches. Then after marking 5 inches, I'm going to connect it to my waistline, and then I'm going to cut out that shape that I have there. Okay, so the neckline here is 3 inches by 1 inch, and then I'm going to cut that out. So you can see that it's quite simple to cut out your 6 pieces blouse. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to add wording to this. I'm going to be padding it with maybe hairstay or soft wording or hard wording or whatever it is that you want to pad it with, and then I'm going to be showing us how we are going to be sewing this together. Okay, so but like I said, the front and the center front and center back doesn't really have much difference actually. So let me just bring in our pattern. So this is our center back, and you can see what it is looking like. So I'm just going to set this aside. So this is the pattern we use for our center back, and here is the pattern for the center front. So now if you just place this on each other, excluding the zipper allowance, you will see that you just have the same shape there. The only difference you may have is where we curve this, but it's very close to each other. But just to be on the safe side, you can cut them out separately like I have done. So now I'm going to go over and cut it and bring it back. Okay, so I've gone ahead to pad this now. You can see I'm padding it with, and I'm doing half padding. I'm not doing a full padding, and I'll be padding it using this gum stay. So now I'll take it to the sewing machine now, and then just sew them together, both the front and the back. I'll just sew it together, then I'll bring it back to show what it looks like, because I don't. Okay, so this is our 6 pieces blouse now. We've sewn it together, and you can see the flares that we created. So like I was saying, assuming this is an 8 pieces, so this same line that you have here, so this is the zipper allowance that I put in front. I just sew it together so that we can see what it looks like on the back part. So assuming it is a 6 piece, it's an 8 pieces, it means this center line also is going to be having a flare from the waistline. So these are the flares, and you can see that it is really beautiful and simple to make this. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe. and I'll see you in the next one. So I just held our flare with the pin so that we can see how big the flare is. So if you want it to be bigger than this, you just add to your allowance. So this is really beautiful and simple to make. I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye.